The Social Exchange Theory by Aaron Logan. Is this relationship worth my time? The social exchange theory was introduced by sociologist George Hammonds in his article entitled Social Behavior as Exchange. In this article, Hammonds argues that the balance between social relationships are often based on mathematics and logic rather than emotions. Later, sociologist Peter Blau explains the theory using economic terms. Blau states that in social relationships, voluntary actions of individuals are motivated by the returns that they expect to bring and typically do in fact bring from others. He suggests that relationships are formed through a cost-benefit analysis, that people compare what they put into a relationship, the cost, to what they receive from the relationship, the reward. This ultimately leads to deciding if they are profiting from it and therefore shall continue to invest in it. We are often taught to weigh pros versus cons. This can be translated to rewards versus costs. Does the rewards of sneaking another cookie from the cookie jar outweigh the cost of mom finding out? Next, I will discuss the concept of rewards and costs in terms of social relationships. But first, I believe it is important to note that researchers are not suggesting this as an ideal method for relating, but rather providing their analysis of human behavior in the social environment. Rewards, in terms of social relationships, rewards can take many forms. What is considered a reward can be perceived differently by individuals. There are two types of rewards: extrinsic rewards, which are physical items such as money or material items, and intrinsic rewards, such as receiving compliments or validations. For example, you might be someone who appreciates when your friend offers to pay for lunch, or when your coworker gives you a mug of coffee for a coffee mug for helping them out. On the other hand, you might put more value on someone praising you for doing well on a project or giving you a big hug after a hard day. How frequent the reward is received will alter the perceived value of such reward. Satiation is when rewards are given too frequently and lose their value, while on the other hand, rewards given more scarcely will have greater value. An example of this is if your roommate washes your dishes every day after every meal, it will eventually become normal and hold less value than if they only did it once a week. Additionally, the value of the reward can change over time. In relationships, costs are something that is taken away or a new consequence inflicted on the individual. These can also be extrinsic, which are physical items such as money or material items, or intrinsic, exertion of energy or missed opportunities elsewhere. For example, let's say your friend just recently got divorced and calls you every day to process what he's feeling, leading you to expend your mental energy on his problems. Or maybe they need a place to live and ask to crash at your place for a while. The extent of the cost may also be fluent depending on your situation. Perhaps you have an extra room for your friend to crash in, or much free time and energy to help them process. And therefore, the perceived cost is lower. In the view of the social exchange theory, the ultimate question is, am I profiting from this relationship? In terms of profits, there are positive profits when the rewards received from the relationship are greater than the costs, or negative profits when the costs from the relationships are greater than the rewards received. In conclusion, the social exchange theory argues that individuals who receive greater benefit from a social relationship than the value inputted are more likely to continue to develop such relationships. Investment in a social relationship that is costing you more than you are getting in return is less likely to continue. Now we will move on to attachment theory. Attachment theory is an understanding of how attachments are formed between child and caregiver, and the patterns that develop during early childhood which guide us in relationships throughout our lives. Attachment theory was developed by psychiatrist and psychoanalyst John Bowlby in 1958. Up until this point, it was believed that attachment is a learned behavior and determined by the feeding relationship between caregiver and child. Bowlby was highly influenced by the object relations theory in psychoanalytic psychology, which explained the relationship between the process of developing a psyche to those in a child environment. Bowlby agreed that there is a direct relationship between the infant's connection to its mother and the formation of personality in the adult life. However, he did not agree with the theory's emphasis on children creating internal images of their experiences that become objects in the unconscious that then are carried into adulthood. Bowlby hypothesized that the infant and young child should experience a warm, intimate, and continuous relationship with his mother in which both find satisfaction and enjoyment, the lack of which may have significant and irreversible mental health consequences. He proposed that there are mechanisms underlying an infant's emotional connection to the caregiver, which were the result of an evolutionary pressure, that the internal programming we developed that directs us to form attachments shortly after birth was selected because it increases the child's likelihood of survival. Bowlby's student, Mary Ainsworth, didn't believe that attachment was an all or nothing process. She continued to conduct research to confirm hypothesis that there are different patterns of attachment developed depending on the care the child receives. In infants, attachment theory is observed as the seeking of closeness to an attachment figure during stressful situations. When a caregiver provides consistent and appropriate responsiveness to an infant from age 6 months to 2 years, an attachment is formed. Towards the end of this period, children begin to use the caregiver as a safe base to explore from and to. Imagine a toddler who might crawl towards the family dog, investigate it, then crawl back to mommy to ensure safety. During the infant's phase of exploration, patterns of attachment will begin to develop based on how the caregiver responds. The attachment patterns create internal working models which guide the feelings, thoughts, and expectations of the child in relationships throughout their lives. In Ainsworth's research, she observed 4 different types of attachment style. They are secure attachment, anxious ambivalent attachment, anxious avoidant attachment, and disorganized or disoriented attachment. Infants create secure attachments when their caregiver responds consistently and appropriately to their needs. Securely attached infants explore freely when a caregiver is present. They become upset when their caregiver departs and generally experience calm when they reunite. Due to the responsiveness of the caregiver, the child generally learns how to cope with new situations. For this reason, secure attachments are considered the most adaptable. Anxious ambivalent attachments are generally formed due to the unavailability of a caregiver. The infant learns that they cannot depend on the caregiver to always be there when they need them. These children become very distressed when their caregiver leaves and often ambivalent when they reunite. These children are more wary of strange situations or people. Later research suggests that children with a past of abuse are more likely to develop this attachment style. Children who are neglected or punished for relying on a caregiver will develop an anxious, avoidant attachment style. They will learn to avoid seeking support in the future. They are unlikely to explore regardless of who's with them. These children will have little emotions when their caregiver leaves and often avoid them when they reunite. It is believed that this avoidance allows the child to take their focus off of the unfulfilled desires for closeness to the caregiver. Additionally, there is not usually a strong preference between caregiver and a complete stranger. Ainsworth noticed that not all children fit perfectly into these 3 categories. Disorganized, disoriented attachment style is generally developed when the caregiver's response is inconsistent, sometimes providing a sense of comfort and others a sense of fear. Children with this attachment style will express mixed behaviors, appearing disoriented, dazed, or even confused, sometimes expressing rapid changes or contradictory behaviors. Studies often found children to express body language suggesting stress, but no clear signs of avoidance or ambivalence. On the screen now is my case study. I do not have enough time to read the full case study, so please consider pausing to take it in fully. In our case study, we can recognize how the social exchange theory affects Samantha and her family. Samantha's mother, Carol, babysits her daughter, Kim, when Samantha is at work. The cost to Carol is her food, time, and energy. Her reward is the love and affection she receives from Kim. Most often, this feels equitable, and Carol is happy to babysit. However, occasionally Samantha gets home late and Carol must miss her weekly bingo night. This is an added cost that tips the scale significantly for Carol. Babysitting no longer feels equitable, and Carol becomes resentful and less willing to continue babysitting. Carol babysitting is a great asset for Samantha, as it allows her to work more hours and save on childcare costs, and therefore would be a great loss if it were to discontinue. It would be a great opportunity to discuss this during a child and family teaming meeting. Samantha must have the chance to express her need and gratitude for her mother's help. Additionally, they must address Carol's concerns and explore solutions to ensure that this asset is protected. On another note, we can look at how attachment theory might be playing a role in Samantha's life. Her attachment style may be contradicting the social exchange theory. Although Samantha was connecting well with her boyfriend in an equitable manner, she still pulled away from the connection and chose not to continue the relationship. It would be necessary to explore the relationship between Samantha and her mother during her early childhood to discover which attachment patterns she has created. Perhaps we would find that mom was not often available to respond to Samantha's need. We also know that her father left her at age 5. With this information, we might be able to discover that Samantha developed an anxious avoidant attachment style. This would explain her fear that her boyfriend wouldn't be there for her and decide it's safer to end the relationships herself. We have now looked at social exchange theory and attachment theory, how it may play a role in our work and how they are observed in the social environment. Thank you.